We're going through a time right now that is unprecedented. When I was building a device that the Arcturians were helping me to make, I was getting frustrated because I was trying to understand more of the structural qualities of this. I said there's going to be a world of difference between living and understanding from the heart intelligence than there is from your mind intelligence. We've become so tuned to the structural attributes of what we see around us that we have largely lost the perception of the actual infinite living field qualities that actually underlie that structure. What they're saying is that when humanity learns to have all those other facets of perception become extensions or instruments of the Sacred Heart Center, that living intelligence, you will have perceptions of things beyond your wildest imagination. The energy we emanate is how the universe mirrors and responds to us. That's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before.
You had the Arcturians and the Pleiadians helping you with your PhD. You're the first person I've ever met who could say that.
And what they really would love to help humanity do is to...
Welcome everybody to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. I can't remember being this excited for an interview. We have Dave Clements with us today. And first of all, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all the incredible work you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited. But yeah, we recently had Pam Gregory recommend you, our good friend Pam. And so that was about a couple weeks ago when we set up this interview. And last week, I reached out to the Heart Coherence Collaborative because I'll do this every few months. I'll ask them, hey, who do you guys recommend that we have on? And I'm gonna put you on the spot here, but we had 7 emails come in saying, I enjoy your interviews. Have you heard of Dr. David Clements? I highly recommend him. He is amazing. Another one saying, you know, you got to have David Clements on. So we got flooded with all these people. David Clements, his story is rather remarkable. We love David Clements. He's on my list of amazing. So everybody, I mean, you are just catching on like wildfire. So who is Dave Clements, man? I'm so excited to finally meet you.
Yeah, likewise. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a real joy and pleasure to be here, and thank you to all the kind people who have warmed to the information that my teams and myself have been giving. It's a beautiful honor, and I can't thank you all enough for the warm reception that you've given. And it's for me, it's such a beautiful wonder and a joy to be able to give uplifting information that really helps people get back into their sovereignty, their self-empowerment, and their truth, because that's really what it's all about. You know, I'm not somebody who wants to be. I tend to tell people if they start putting me on a pedestal, and you have to stop that. No, because this is not about me. We're all here working on this project together. You know, this is the Earth Project, and we're all working to open ourselves up to our truths and living in a world where we are all operating from that level. And that's why I do it. That's one of the main reasons I love to do this. So yeah.
That's awesome, and I love that. Don't put me on a pedestal. That's such a
right, yes,
thing, but I feel the same way. I love that. Yeah. Such a powerful message in itself. Now, the one thing that I want to get into is you talk about your guides. Could you just explain? Because a lot of people messaging me are like, his guides are amazing. It's Dave and the guides. So before I introduce your counterparts here.
Yeah, my posse. Okay.
Yeah, who's your posse? Who's your posse?
Yeah. I guess I should start from the beginning to introduce how it all came about. I guess in a way it would be kind of cool. When I was very young, I was very artistic. Loved everything creative. I was passionate about drawing. I loved everything. I was always away with my imagination. You know, detested books. I didn't like reading. I wanted visuals, pictures. Everything had to be, visual. And, as I was going through my younger years, I had such deep passion for everything that was going on up there, everything to do with things flying around, stories about people having encounters, all these kind of things. I just loved all of that stuff. I wanted to read everything that I could. And going through school, they didn't know what to do with me because I wouldn't learn anything. I didn't want to learn anything. I was just always away with my imagination with the fairies. I was dreaming of all sorts of things that I wanted to be a part of and had no time for school at all. And I was literally on the brink, and my mum had to step in and stop them from kicking me out of the school because of, the way I was being there. And they did keep me, and eventually I had a bit of a turnaround. Something kicked on, and I started to develop a very keen interest towards mathematics and physics and sciences. And so as that started to progress, I still had this keen, interest in everything to do with everything up there. And as things progressed, I then came to do an undergraduate degree, and I wanted to do a sort of double degree or double major in mathematics and physics. I effectively did 2 degrees at the same time. And they're all thinking, I don't think you should do this. This is, this is going to be too much for you. And I said, no, I really, really want to do this. I really feel like I have to do this. And I did that and went all the way through. And it's kind of interesting because when I got to, so I did an undergraduate degree in maths and physics, then I did a master's in mathematics after that. And then I did a Master of Advanced Study in theoretical physics following that one. And then I did my PhD. And I absolutely just devoured everything to do with that stuff. I really, really had this deep passion and yearning to peel open the covers to find out how the universe was working. And it was such a massive turnaround from where I was to where I was going. And at that point, I had no idea about the higher self or anything sort of multidimensional. To me, multidimensionality in the work I was doing was to do with like string theory and like, multidimensional spaces and things like that. I was not in this frame of mind at all, And so as things progressed, about just over a year into my PhD, a friend bought me a book. And it was everything to do with ESP, ET encounters. It was a whole volume of different things, just looking at the whole subject as a big, a viewpoint. But one thing in particular really caught my eye was to do with remote viewing. And when I saw what these people were doing, these people that were part of these original programs that were able to bilocate and literally see themselves and experience themselves on another planet, very viscerally, I thought, wow, if that can be done, I really would love to be able to do that. So I hopped online and thought somebody somewhere must be doing some sort of course so that I can have a go at, and lo and behold, I found a company. And it was an order kit that you just get the videos, you go through the training, you start doing the exercises, you practice. And so my first real target, and for those who aren't familiar with remote viewing, the protocol is that you're given a target or a photograph of the target, and on the back is a sequence of numbers. And the idea is that the person who has looked at that target, who is the person who gives you the target to look at, says, okay, I'm going to write a series of numbers which correlates to sort of a number address, if you like, of that place. So you're going to look at the numbers, you're not going to see the photograph, you're not going to see anything about the target, you're going to connect with those numbers, and then you're going to start connecting with the target via this ESP or remote viewing protocol. So I did that, and then suddenly as I was going to the middle of the target, there was this really, really profound rumbling noise, like somebody had a bass that they'd left on in the background and this thing was really cooking, But it was inside me. It wasn't an external sound. It was like a sound I could hear internally. And I thought, okay, well, that's strange. I think, okay, I'll keep going, see how this works out. And then suddenly, as I've got more and more sort of saturated, as the term is, with the target, I started to feel hot liquid flowing all over me, like it was just, whoa, okay. So I was getting quite excited at this stage, like, wow, I really am somewhere right now. I don't know where I am, And then you could start seeing sort of almost, visuals of this stuff flowing past you. At that point, I thought, okay, right, I'm going to put my pen down. This is getting a little bit too much for a first experience, And I went out, I was in my college dorm at the time. There was a friend of mine who was in the kitchen making some dinner. I had a conversation with him, trying to get my mind off it, but these sensations continued, the rumbling, the hot liquid flow. I thought, man, is this going to stop, or is this, So anyway, eventually it settled down after 10 minutes, and I went back into my room, flicked the piece of Cardo. It was a Volcano. So I thought, okay, this definitely does work, and that was a very, very accurate experience of a first attempt. But what really happened there as well was I felt that there was a first real click on connection with my higher self to get me very much aware of multidimensional energetics, the higher self, expanded states of self, and what humanity inside is really capable of doing. Because I did that for a little bit, but then I was moved away and really had this passion to looking into the higher self and who are we as a multidimensional being, and I went headlong into that. So I kind of left the actual protocol version of remote viewing behind, and then really started to kick in with the higher self. And my first experience of the higher self, I was with a group, and it was doing a Pleiadian light work. So it was, I think it was by Maura Kuan Yin, this particular set of teachings. And as we did this exercise of bringing the higher self, one person would do it while the other person would read or sit there and watch them. And she said, wow, when you did that, this massive energy field just opened up inside you. And when we started these sessions where we said, right, you're now going to read somebody else energetically, I thought, how? I don't know. What, have you got any help? How do we do this? So no, just sit down. If you get into the high self state, everything will just flow. And I was like, okay, well, let's see if this is going to work. So I sat down and did this. And then suddenly these very just super high resolution images started to come to read these energetics about this person, about what they needed to look at, what they needed to do, those kind of things. And I thought, oh, holy cow. And to begin with, I thought, am I just imagining this? And I kept reading back. I said, well, I'm seeing this. Does that mean anything to you? She gave that spot on. That's exactly some of the things that she's going through. I thought, okay, well, that's good feedback. So at least I know I'm not, going off the handle here. But as things progressed, I began really working with the higher self, almost most of the day, every day, 365. And my high self sort of wanted to jump in the deep end and said, basically, right, now you've got to go on a huge clearing spree. You've got to get all this junk out of the way to make a very clear connection and really, really sort of deep, crystal clear connection. So my early days were quite difficult because there was a heap of stuff that I had to just mull through and just dig this stuff out and turf it out. And for anyone, I'm sure you guys as well, when you're going through stuff, it's no fun. And when you get it up every day to kind of turf through, that really is no fun at all. And so my earlier days was really, oh my God, well, I almost wanted to get out of this because it was so intense, But looking back on it now and seeing how my high self was playing everything, I see the benefit and just had this crash course of having to go through and clear so deeply and so heavily. But during that period, a group called the Pleiadians, from the Pleiadian star system, came through. And they're very gentle, very wise, very heart-centered, very intelligent race of beings, very, very sweet and caring. And they were very compassionate and patient with me because they would sort of give advice. So, okay, you really need to look at that bit there. And I'd sort of try a little bit, wouldn't get it right. And they said, oh, it's okay, just take your time, just relax, it's fine, And they were very patient and understanding of the human process of what had to, come off and the evolutions that needed to take place. But the interesting thing is, side by side with this, so I had started to become aware of the Pleiadian aspect right towards the end of when I was doing my PhD. But before that started, before even the remote viewing started, I should mention that I just felt that the research I was doing my PhD wasn't really getting at what I wanted to get at. I thought I really wanted to peel back the covers, but this isn't, because I was working in superstring theory and trying to create string theory models that would try to match, what we see in the universe. And I thought, this doesn't feel right to me. There's something not quite right here. And so I started to look around and I came across the work of Tom Bearden. I'm sure many of your viewers might know. And Tom Bearden was a ex-lieutenant colonel in the US Army. And he was, I don't know fully if he had access to certain things behind the scenes, but he created this group to do with inventions towards getting energy out of the vacuum. So I was just sprawling around on the internet, just trying to look for anything to do with keywords, energy, all this kind of stuff. I really wanted to just sniff around and see if I could find something. And I came across Tom. Read his stuff on his website. I thought, wow, this is cool. If you are for real doing this, I want to get in touch and hear from you, And I didn't expect anything back. I thought, it's just, some research student at university getting in touch. I'm sure he's got tons of people that, contact him. And next day I got an email from him and I thought, wow, I was really, really stoked and honored that he did. And we struck up this real friendship and he sent me a ton of books. He said, right, read those. I don't like reading, but okay. So anyway, it was great. And he developed a real keen interest in me because I think that I didn't know at the time that I was probably the first mainstream academic to actually reach out to him to say, hey, what you're doing is fantastic. I'd love to know more. And then, so this was about 6 months into my PhD, 6 months to edge of the year. So I hadn't started the remote viewing yet. So this was now running concurrently with all the stuff I was doing energetically and spiritually, and also working with Tom as well.
Our mission here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative is to get people in touch with the healing power of the heart.
And we really need your help. Right now, only 1% of viewers subscribe. We are aiming to take that number to 6%.
The reason why we want to do that is the more people that subscribe, the more people in the world can learn the magical practice of heart coherence.
So please help us out. If you've ever listened, if you love this message, please just take a moment to subscribe.
Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you.
And so this, as it ran forward, they invited me over to take part in this documentary called Energy from the Vacuum series. And again, I was so honored because I hadn't done anything. All these other inventors they had brought along to be part of this documentary had done many things over years. So I felt really, really kind of like, I'm sure I got invited, but I was really stoked and honored to be part of it. And being part of that was really wonderful, meeting Tom, getting to know the just fantastic human being and spirit that he was and all that he had done. And he then said, well, we're talking with this group in Scotland and this research. Would you like us to see if we can set a position up? And I thought, yeah, that was fantastic. So that's how I started a research post researching what Tom was doing in academia. And then they said, well, we'd like you to meet this guy, John Bedini, as well, who's, another well-known legend in these kind of fields. And so I got to meet John, and this was my first experience of what I now call living energetics, because I got invited to John's lab. And, John is a funny guy. He's ex-military like Tom, swore like a trooper, but really funny about it. He was quite a character, real barrel of laughs to be around. And anyway, so on the first visit, he took me into this sort of walled off section of his industrial unit. No roof and a big open door with, just where two doors should have been, but they were taken off. So it was an open entrance. And as I walked in and he had these devices running, the change in energy was profound. Literally, as soon as he walked through the threshold of the door, the energy went right off the charts. It was really high. You could literally feel it as you wave your hand through the environment, the air. I thought, whoa, okay. So I stepped back out again and it all went down again, and then I went through the threshold and it went way up again. And John was looking at me thinking, what's wrong with you? It's kind of like, it's in the funny way that he did. He was always poking fun at people. And then I thought there's something really quite profound going on with how these devices are working. And so eventually I replicated and built my own and tested it, and the same energy emanation would start appearing. And, I'd sit down in meditation, I'd meditate and sort of connect with my higher self, and was getting guidance and from this and the other teams. And at this point, also the Arcturians came in, because I know your initial question was about like, who are the teams? So I'm going in a big roundabout way to kind of connect the dots here. But the Arcturians came in because they are incredibly adept scientifically, or what I call living energy science, not the sort of dead structural science that we use down here. And we can go more into that in a bit if you like. But they really wanted to, alongside the Pleiadians, start to help me remember and cultivate the understanding of what it was I was dealing with. And at that point, because of my training, which was all very structural, very mathematical, very dry and kind of mechanical, I couldn't make head nor tails of it, because I was trying to sort of put mathematical formulas together to try and describe this, and nothing would work, and I got very frustrated. And they would come in and they would sort of introduce concepts, and I go, right, and try and sort of, pile together some structure and understanding, and then the energy would just go, it would just, I thought, whoa, where's it gone? I was really excited and now I feel really flat. And after a while they were saying, you're trying to structuralize that which is a living field, a living energetic, and you cannot do that. It just doesn't apply. And eventually down the road, when I was building a device that the Arcturians were helping me to make, and I was getting frustrated again because I was trying to understand more of the structural qualities of this. And they said, no, just settle down. They said, what you're going to understand is there's going to be a world of difference between living and understanding from the heart intelligence than there is from your mind intelligence. And bear in mind, the Arcturians are just an unfathomably advanced race, spiritually, energetically, mentally, at all aspects. Their living energy tech, if you like, is renowned, as far as I understand, around this universe. It's profound. And this race of beings, were literally saying, if you live from here, if you work from here, if you perceive from here, you're going to see vistas, things you can never see from here. And you're going to operate in ways that are going to be supremely beneficial to everyone and everything, because that is how the intelligence of love operates. And that was quite an aha moment for me, because I had such a reverence for the Arcturians and what they had done and the living technologies that they created. I thought, wow, I really have been coming at this from the wrong angle because of my background and training that was so structural and so rigid and linear and mechanical. And it opened me up to understand that heart perception is way, way beyond any other levels of perception. And it doesn't make those other levels of perception wrong. It just means that what they're saying is that when humanity learns to have all those other facets of perception become extensions or instruments of the heart center, of the sacred heart center, that living intelligence, you will have perceptions of things beyond your wildest imagination. Because right now, humanity is so locked into such a rigid, almost super confined, limited bandwidth of perception of what you can and can't see. And we think, oh, this is the whole world. All we've got to do is just roll out the right formulas and get it together, and then we've got our grasp on reality. No, nothing could be further from the truth in my view. And so to come back to the original question about my team, so it was the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, and there was a mix of other groups there that were from way outside of our galaxy, names that I couldn't even begin to pronounce. And they all started contributing and helping along. The Andromedans were some of them the contributors as well. And what they really would love to help humanity do is to learn that we've never not had the ability to perceive advanced multidimensional energetics. But we've cornered ourselves, and that's a very key expression. We have cornered ourselves by using our free will to desensitize ourselves and put ourselves in such a clamp, energetic clamp, that all we can see is basically bare bones physical stuff, And a lot of people say, oh, I wish I could see this, and I wish I could see it. Well, actually you can. You just have to undo the self-clamping that you've put on through many different lifetimes for many different reasons, and everybody's path is uniquely different, of how you have literally clamped your perceptive abilities down just to this minimal little focus point, which just says physical, 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 and that's it. And so it's this huge vista, this huge perception change that I went through in what these beings were helping me to do. And the more I experienced, and the other key thing they said, look, play and experience are fundamentally important. Because I wanted to kind of like, when they'd give me an idea, right, okay, how do I do this? And all the, getting that sort of monkey brain of mine wanted to jump in on it. And they said, no. Don't try to dissect it before you built it, because you haven't had the experience of the energy yet. You don't know, you haven't had a direct experience yet. So they were saying one of the key things is to build, switch it on, feel, and play. Get to learn what it is that you're dealing with by having a direct experience of it. If they were saying, if you want to just sit back and try to intellectually conjure up what it is you think you're going to experience, you're going to get it all wrong. That's not going to happen that way. And so they're very big on humanity, being very playful, because the playfulness gives you that relaxation and openness that it's all fun, because that's what it should be. There is no serious in this. And my dealing with the teams, they are just a bunch of jokers, really. They love mucking around. Any chance to be fun and playful, they're right there. And, my wife, when she gets information for me sometimes when I'm going through some purgings, said, your higher self is so funny. He's always making jokes about what you're going through and things like that, And I believe that's the case, because in my former years, when I began my journey into higher self connection, as a lot of people do, they get very serious about it. Oh no, this is almost like a solemn practice. And they say, no, don't do that. Just brush that off. Keep it fun. It's got to be really jovial. It's got to be really, rich with laughter, because that is where you're going to get the greatest access, because the living intelligence that is love is exactly that. It is playful. It is the child that wants to explore and open up and do fun things and play with things, jump on things. And, that is the essence of the living source intelligence within us. And they were always encouraging me to break out of those old habits of being so serious and so, what have you. And so, it's all part of that beautiful energy. But having the direct experience of the living energetics that would happen. And when I replicated what John was doing and made my own different versions that the Arcturians were helping me make, the energetics that would come off with this thing were just so sublime and beautiful. You turn this thing on, and I remember the first time I switched it on, we're in Thailand at the time because I was building it there. And just the whole apartment just went like really high, and I was like, whoa, I wasn't physically levitating, but I felt like I was, because the energies were so high. And I was texting my wife, say, get back, and just like, as you come towards the apartment, tell me what you feel. I was so excited. And I realized, wow, just how such a profound jump in energy, just a simple system of a coiling system, running on incredibly low voltage. It was like 5 or 10 volts. It wasn't anything at all. But that simple system was able to produce an energetic that flooded the entire apartment and just lifted the whole thing up. It was crazy. And then later on, we thought, well, what happens if, we were sitting down and then my teams came in and they said, hey, have you ever thought about putting your food near that device and see what happens? Thought, okay, I've just made this. How long do we have to put it next to it? This is just a few minutes. It's fine. It's like, I don't want it to get cold. So, we put it next to the device and left it for a few minutes. And the difference afterwards was just, I can't really express in words, just the profound energetic difference in the material that was the food after being near this device. So it's I don't know if you have any questions. I've just held a whole bunch of other stuff thrown at you there,
but I just want to keep on listening because it's so amazing. But like, first of all, you had the Arcturians and the Pleiadians helping you with your PhD. You're the first person I've ever met who could say that. But the one question that comes to mind before, I would just love to keep listening to your story because it's so beautiful. But do you think it's because you were playing in such high energy areas that these beings were attracted to you?
That's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before. I couldn't put my finger on it for sure. I feel that looking back, I felt what actually happened was it was the profound experience of the remote viewing really helped to kick me up the rear end to launch me in that direction, so to speak. Because up until that point, like I said, I had no concept that there was a higher self or an advanced energetic that was inside us. It just wasn't even on my radar at the time at all. But having that very, very profound visceral experience really showed me, yes, absolutely, 100%, there is something there. Don't know what it is yet, but there is something there. And my journey into that, when I started getting to connect with the higher self, realizing, oh my goodness, we have this profound multidimensional living intelligent field system in us that we call, the levels of our higher selves, going all the way back to source intelligence. And it was part of the unraveling there for me was because I had been so focused in the structural qualities of energy, the mechanical, mathematical, the sort of physics side of things, that it was what my teams were trying to tell me, the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, my higher self, and the other teams that would come in as well, was saying that one of the things that humanity is going to shift with is your perception that everything is structural when it isn't. Structure is something that is created within fields. It's not a primary thing. In other words, if you imagine an ocean, everything is ocean, and suddenly an ice forms within the ocean. It's still water, but now it's become a structural aspect sitting in a fluid medium that itself has no structure. I know, water still has an atomic and molecular structure, but if you imagine just as a continuous fluid, suddenly you get the perception of something that has manifested within that space, that is of that substance, but has crystallized into a form, which we call structure. And the way I understand it now is they're saying everything, fundamental particles, atoms, are all in essence that, and by having these basic building blocks to put together, you can then form even bigger structures and bigger formations into human beings, DNA, planets, galaxies, you name it. It's all this beautiful fractal progression from this source field sort of making itself into more and more structure, more and more density to where we get to where we are now. We get to play in this very dense structure. But as we open up the energetics of those and they start to become more fluid and move back towards that source oneness, suddenly the perception of structure falls away and the quality of infinite everything starts to come back into play again. And they were saying that when the dichotomy of structure is that the more in structure or more focused in physicality you are, the less perception and the more you lose the perception of the infinite all. Whereas as you head back towards the infinite all, suddenly you have perception of everything, including the structure as well. And that's where humanity largely finds itself, because we've become so tuned to the structural attributes of what we see around us. We've fixated ourselves on it, that we have largely lost the perception of the actual infinite living field qualities that actually underlie that structure, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things that I had to kind of, come to terms with over the many years of working. And it's like undoing the old to realize, oh my goodness, it really is that simple. You don't need to have, to go through and do a PhD to understand this stuff. And they were always saying to me, the more simple and playful you can keep it, the more closer to the truth you're gonna get. The more you complicate things, the more you start to make, I don't know, brainiac things, I guess you could say, the further away from the actual truth you're going to move. Mm-hmm. And that, in a way, is representative of how mainstream physics is today. When I was at high school, I watched this documentary and watched these sort of leading mainstream physicists say, and the documentarian asked them, like, when do you think you're going to have all this wrapped up, this final theory of everything? And they say, I think probably maybe 5 to 10 years from now we'll be done. So quarter of a century later, it's still no closer, because I believe it's a hall of mirrors. The more complication you try to put, the more complicated mirrors appear, and the whole sort of feedback of mirrors upon mirrors upon mirrors keep appearing. You never actually get to the simple truth of things, because you're just adding layers of complication on top of each other, and you're moving further away from the center, which is the truth. So yeah, it's a very interesting journey that
yeah, it's definitely unique. And I just, I love your energy and your story and everything you've shared so far. I'm curious. So all this is coming into your life. You're in your PhD, and they're basically saying, live from the heart, be more joyous. Like, what happens next? Do you actually start integrating this work and start, is it crazy? Do you lose your mind a little bit? Or like, what's the next step in the journey for you?
Yeah, it's interesting you say it that way, because very much there was a big period of uncertainty, because I was so sure about my mind perspective and approach on things that untethering myself and letting go of that. And being in that space, like, a monkey swinging from another branch, letting go and being in that in between when you're not sure where you're actually going to grab next. And they were saying that actually you're not going to grab anywhere next. You're letting go completely. This is what it is to move into that trust. And to me, trust is really just another word for surrendering to self, true self. There's nothing to grab on. There's nothing to hold on to. You're literally like as if you were going into an ocean and just completely letting go and relaxing and surrendering into the living organic being that the ocean is. And it's very similar for yourself, the way you do that. And that is a scary prospect. It was for me, and I know it is for a lot of people, because we're so used to grip and holding on. And that's another thing that keeps us in structure, because we feel like when we've got a grip on our lives or we've got a sort of control, it makes us feel safe, or it gives us the illusion of safety. But in truth, the safest place we could ever be is in complete self-surrender, because one way to look at it is, like my teams and my higher self were saying, when you surrender to self, that heart center, and you allow that intelligence to emanate, instead of having to control your life to make sure this doesn't happen, or I stay away from that, or I head in that direction where I want to go, by forcing and reshaping and physically moving things in place in your life, what happens is that intelligence comes through and it starts to organize everything for you in a high dimensional energetic way. And suddenly things just move out of their way by themselves. Things rearrange themselves. Things that you thought were heading your way just disappear. And they're saying that when you have such a level of emanation of that source intelligence, many depictions of masters of the past having this sort of effervescent glow that came from them. And what my teams were suggesting to me, and I feel from my higher self, is that glow was a massive level of source intelligence that was coming and glowing from them, that literally everything in their lives would shape it exactly as that source intelligence within them, their core self, would love it to be. And it does so in a way that brings the most joy to you and the most joy to everybody else around. It knows you inside and out. It knows them inside and out, because it underlies all of us. It's the one unified source field. It knows every being that is in existence right now, and it knows the whole spread of everything, and it knows exactly how to work things in a way that's going to, bring you the greatest joy, help you learn the lessons that you wish to learn, and move you in those directions. Whereas control is more based on fear of not wanting to experience something so as to avoid it, but we end up encountering it anyway, because we're actually still holding on to it whether we know it or not. And so that changeover from, and another way of looking at it is, they were saying that the mind's version of understanding, as it operating as an independent instrument that is somewhat separated from the heart intelligence, is control. That's its version of understanding. Once it has, you've heard the term many times, once I've got a grip on this concept or this idea, well, that's control. You're trying to master or grip it and think that you've mastered it. You need to let go. But the heart's version of understanding is compassion. And what they were saying is, when the human mind makes a sufficient reconnection and becomes an instrument of the heart center, that need to control and grip and have a handle on things disappears. It becomes a blissful, very beautiful instrument that is capable of imagining things that are beyond anything that we can do right now. And that's all part of the wholesome of integration again, and it all comes back to the heart center and that core source intelligence that is in the very heart of the sacred heart, or the soul heart. And inside, they were saying, there is a gateway that I refer to as the infinite source gateway, which is each of our direct access to the source field. Nothing interrupts it. It's your direct calling line back to the source field, and we each have one. And they had been teaching me, and I'd sort of been sharing these meditations, since about 2000, and it was the end of 2023 when Source Intelligence came through and told me about this and said, we would really love for you to help people understand this so that they can do it themselves. To really connect with that infinite source gateway and start opening the floodgates, so source intelligence can start saturating your cellular structure, your body, your mind, and begin building that beautiful, pristine human condition of what we're moving into. So yeah, definitely. It's again, so just a whole tangent on what you originally
Oh, it's
asked.
all yours. I appreciate this so much, and everything you're saying so amazing. I do have a million questions, but I'll just bring it back.
Right.
So you're talking about, well, first of all, you said there's specific meditations for the heart center. Is that
Yes.
something you can share now, or?
Yeah, there's actually two free ones. So what we did, we made a platform, and to keep it ad free, it's a paid for platform. So we do ask that certain meditations on a subscription, but most of it's for free. So the numbers, if I remember correctly, 14 and 15 are specifically to do with the initial access to opening the infinite source gateway and to open that bridge up. You can do those for free. You can share them around. People can do those. That's fine. And so that is the real foundation, I feel, that because one way of thinking about it is this. Somebody once asked, why is it that as a human form we come in and we have this experience where we start, we come into the world as this beautiful baby full of, you can look into a baby's eyes and you can see the presence of source just beaming out. It's just full of light, love, and fun, and it's just a bundle of joy. And then as it grows up, suddenly all the indoctrination starts and everything starts going a little bit, south. And then suddenly, the body just, instead of supporting itself, just starts falling downhill. And the way my teams explained it was that the source intelligence knows how to generate, support, and change everything exactly to create the right conditions to make everything work properly. Because everything, including cells, the molecules, the DNA, right down to the very atoms and fundamental particles, the subatomic particles that make all of that up, operate. It's all come from source intelligence. But source intelligence respects free will fundamentally without question. And so as a species, because we've made collective choices over many, many lifetimes to just go down, 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 down in density, and lose the perception, and you can't lose the connection to source intelligence completely, that is not possible, but you can put such a cloud of a fortress around you that it makes it seem like it's gone. And what happens is that diminishes the ability of that source intelligence to flood and so nurture and invigorate the cellular structure we call the human body, and go through the DNA system, which is like a beautiful quantum optical light fiber system, if you like. So much to talk about that in itself. That's a whole series all of itself. But when that light reinvigorates and reinfuses through there, that living intelligence, you get back to what we hear about these masters of the past, when they could do all these crazy, amazing things just by just a simple thought. And they would glow with this effervescence, which was this living source energetic coming through them. And so that is where I believe that we're all coming back to and where we're heading to. But it relies on our choice, because it's never going to be forced upon us. It's always, here is the option. What would you like to do? You can follow this path if you like, back to your truth, back to yourself and your self-unfolding, or you can continue on just as you are. It's up to you. So it's not like, Source is just going to flood in and say, right, I'm going to put you straight, I'm going to sort all your problems out. I'm just going to gush through and you're going to be back to scratch. Because that undoes the whole principle of your free choice and your evolution as a free choice living being. So it does rely on our choice to connect and invite, and that's a very key word, to invite in, continually invite in, however you wish to do it. I mean, they've told me that inviting in with the breath is a very fundamentally deep way of doing it, and they do that in the meditations that people can access there. And the infusion of that living source intelligence, as you use the full rhythmic breath to breathe that into your cells, into your body. We've had such profound feedback from people about how suddenly it's just rocket launched them in their spiritual development in ways they were never able to do before. And what I say to people, do you see that wonderful magic? I didn't do that to you. You did that within yourself, and that is the point, because we all have that access right there. No one gives it to us. Yes, somebody can make you aware of it, but you go in and you invite it through and you build the relationship. You build that sense of self, that sense of self-beingness as a source intelligent being. Suddenly, now you're rocketing. Now you're really going for it. And that in of itself is such a beautiful, event that happened to me. And I see it happening for other people as well. You know, the joy of seeing people take that mantle and going for that is very, very profound.
Now, when people go for that, do they need to be ready for their external environment to shift?
Things will certainly change. How it changes will depend on the person, the type of energy that they already have and they're emitting. Because to give an explanation that we are energy emitters, we are energy transceivers, and we are energy perceivers. And what that means is we give off energy, we can transform energy, and we can receive energy. And so in that way, what we're learning to do is get back to the full state of being where we fully understand and are fully responsible to create the energy that we wish to emanate. And the energy we emanate is how the universe mirrors and responds to us, because the signature we're giving off is like a broadcast. And it says, this is what I want to see in my external environment. And so in a quantum way, as there's a whole bunch of notions about, quantum mirroring and how quantum fields respond to intention and focus and you being aware of it. That's very true. But more fundamentally, it literally is that it's actually responding to your emanation instantaneously all the time. So the world we see around us, the physical solidarity, that, the real brick wall and mortar type stuff that we see presents itself like that because that is what we are requesting. We have taken ourselves consciously into such a densified state that we are broadcasting density, structure, mechanics, all that stuff, all the highly densified stuff. So we are literally doing this outside ourselves without truly realizing that we've been doing it all along. And so getting back to that source intelligence within, everything starts to lose its solidarity and starts to become more fluid and more responsive, quicker and quicker and quicker to you, because the nature of of matter itself starts to change in response to you. And this is why I believe masters of the past were able to do what they were able to do, because the energetics that present themselves as this densified holographic structure was able to instantaneously change itself. They could hold out their hand and start manifesting stuff on their hand. Well, they're literally just transducing and shaping energy because they have access to that level of source intelligence where they can fundamentally change anything they want to, just by focusing on it, just by having that perception of it. And that again is another thing that humanity is so unused to. We always talk about, I'll see it when I believe it. Well, what you project is what's coming from you. So you are literally feeding back to yourself your own belief system. Yeah. You're literally, when you see, so science in a way, physics is literally recording down its feedback perception of what they are creating themselves and say, yes, we now understand the universe. No. You're just reading back what we are collectively putting out and shaping our environment to be. But what if you change your emission? Suddenly the physics or the behavior of energy, which is just another word for physics, changes. And now all of a sudden it doesn't behave the way that your equations say it does. It's behaving in a different way. And so fundamentally, I believe, and the way that I've come to see it from my team's perspective as well, is that physics is really just the behavior of energy around you that corresponds exactly to you and the collective field of what we are emanating and are requesting to see and experience. And we can change that. That's a fundamental thing. You are not locked into emanating any particular energy, but what it requires is to go in to release all those filters that filter the energy and make it emanate density, structure, limitation, blah, 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 all that stuff. Take those filters off. And another way of looking at it, just to help your audience, think of a cinema screen. When you go to like an old-fashioned cinema, one of those light projectors that has a film reel that goes over the front of the lens, it's pure white light that isn't made into anything yet until the filter of the film passes over it and then filters and makes sure the only thing you see on that screen is what that filter tells you that you're seeing. And it's the same with humanity. We have all these layers of filters inside of us, that this emanation that comes passes through that and reshapes our reality because we've requested those filters to be there. And so what we see outside of us is exactly and identically some signature or emanation according to those filters. And so when we do healing work and clearing work, what we're actually doing is taking off filter, taking another filter, taking another filter, so that we're getting back to that pure, unfettered, unfiltered emanation where we can generate the reality we wish to be in, not the one that we're sort of forced to live out because of the filtration system that we have, packed inside us. So it's very much, we are absolutely self-empowered, and this whole journey to me is coming back to the truth of you are source intelligence. You don't need those filters there, and you can use your free will to undo and take them off. And when you take them off, you're going to realize you can create literally anything. There's nothing holding you back. You were always only ever holding yourself back. You just didn't understand how you were doing it. And that's part of that wisdom that I had to bang my head against the wall many times before I got it, before I had my aha moment on that. But it's very true. And I think that gives people a great sense of hope to realize when they start to realize, oh my goodness, I have always ever done this and I can always change it. I just have to be aware of the energetics inside me and to be aware that I have that ability to choose to let it go, to dissolve, and my higher self is there ready and waiting the second you ask for it, because it doesn't violate your free will either. And for most people saying, well, why are most people walking around unaware of their higher self? Well, their higher self is not going to violate their free will. So if they are using their free will to be ignorant of their higher self, that is respected. And they continue to walk on until they suddenly decide, you know what, actually, there's something else. You know what? Oh, what is that something else? And the higher self will go, hello, I'm here. Glad to say hi. How you doing? It's in a very simple way. That's kind of how it works. So yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. And the one thing I would like to just add in to try to understand myself personally is you hear so many different people talk about how, energy right now is intensified. There's so many things going on. I'm curious what you and your guides are seeing, and how is that affecting the whole, movie reel situation?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very, we're going through a time right now that is unprecedented, and I don't say that lightly. From what my teams have said, and I know that other people's teams have said the same, is that what we're going on Earth right now has never been done before like this. A planetary in-body ascension, mass ascension like this has never been attempted. This is a first. And so what we're having this influx of energy, of coded energy from all sorts of places, the sun, the galactic core, but also out of literally space itself. That's another thing that is happening. And from within us. And it's all just presenting itself to get people to say, hey, I'm here. Would you like to make a new choice? Would you like to make a choice to let go and move forward? Or do you want to stay where you are? And so literally what's happening is as these energies come in, some of this stuff that we have pre-agreed to allow to break down for us because it would be too dense and too much to ask for a person in one lifetime to go through and work through all this stuff. And so what's happening is a lot of people are having this stuff that they have pre-agreed to just have broken down for them before they incarnated, to literally break down and lift off as this energy comes through. And so people have these reactions, we call them, ascension symptoms, but literally it's the crud. And one way they described it is, imagine like this glass full of mud, you carry this glass everywhere around you. You get so used to it, you don't even realize you're carrying a glass of mud around you with you. Now suddenly a pristine burst of water is going to come into that glass and it's going to force that mud out. Okay, that's the purge. That's the ascension symptoms we have. So whenever we get a burst of high energy, it's literally purging and pushing out the mud that you've pre-agreed to allow to be lifted out of you, so that you can get a clearer sense of yourself and the increased sensitivity to yourself, so that you can start to make better and better choices and start to jump on the bandwagon of personal development and personal ascension, if that is what you want to do. So yeah, as these energies raise, a lot of people are having a whole flurry of different symptoms. It can be all sorts, weird things, small things, they're all shapes and sizes. And it all depends on what type of energy you have accumulated over many different lifetimes and the unique experiences you've had and where you have stored them. Because, for example, if we've had a very traumatic experience, say like being hunted by a pack of, some culture, ancient culture way in the past, there'll be an immense amount of fear and panic and dread. And, you might be hiding for a day, worried like crazy that you're going to get found or something. As we do that and we clamp the energies, we are literally storing it into our energetic system. And if we don't release it, that gets carried through to the next life and the next life until we eventually, alleviate ourselves from it. Now, if we recognize it, there's an enormous amount of help within our higher selves and our teams to clear it and break it down for you. You don't have to go through this whole 9 yards to get rid of it. You just have to be aware that it's there. And that's a key thing that my teams were saying to me. Awareness of it is the key. Because if you're not aware of it, you cannot use your free will to undo it. Because it's just stuck hiding somewhere. It's like trying to ask somebody who's playing hide and seek with you that can't hear you, okay, can you clear yourself? Can't hear you. No, sorry. I don't know what's going on here. You have to be able to access the energy, and to access it is to become aware of it. And so whenever there's physical pain or something going on, what the guides say to me is that breathe into that area, feel the energetic of what is there and trying to get your attention, become fully aware of it. It will present itself to you. Then you'll say, okay, I understand it now. I know what's there. Now I can make a fully free will choice. I wish this to be cleared. Offer it up to your higher self. Let your higher self break it down, dissolve the emotional charge on it, which is another big thing that keeps things in place, and just let the whole thing dissolve away. And another key thing is to ask for that to be replaced with your higher self love light energetic. So you're moving the mud out and you're now replacing it with something higher and better that you can now jump forward with. And you keep doing that with all these aspects of you, all the mud coming up. And now suddenly you're really accelerating on a process of clearing the dross, the filters, the mud, and you're replacing it with the real you, So to me, that's been a very profound, very rapid way to accelerate yourself into truly who you are. And it gets rid of things so quickly. I remember when I first began, God, I would go through things for weeks. It would just be this dross of, oh God, when is this going to end? And now heavy duty stuff can come up and you go into it. Okay, I understand it. I see everything now. Okay, higher self, get in there, do your business, and it's gone, and within 5 minutes. Sometimes if there's a lot of emotional charge, it can take a little bit longer, maybe half an hour or something, but that bad boy is gone, and it is replaced with something that is now intelligently occupying that space that is now you, the real you. It's very profound.
I love that. Yeah, I've went through a lot of ascension symptoms over the last few years. I was never allergic to any foods growing up, and over the last year, I've become allergic to literally like gluten, sugar, dairy, anything I pretty much put in my body that's not natural is inflaming my system. So I'm gonna try that and welcome my higher power in to bring in something new. One thing that I'm really curious about, because we're the Heart Coherence Collaborative, and what we try to do is we run these events where we get people to get in touch with their heart for consecutive periods of time. I'm curious, have your guides ever mentioned if like actually tapping into that energy collectively does anything when we do it together as groups, or is it just all woo-woo what you hear people talk about?
I can feel my teams here. They're saying it most certainly is not woo-woo. You see, there is this whole ethos, and it's coming from somebody who's been in mainstream academia and walking the same corridors of people like Stephen Hawking and other people like that. I can say very hand on heart that there is this stigma that has been attached to this idea of heart intelligence, and I see it a lot. I've been on panels in the past where people come on, they're so anti this idea of heart intelligence and everything, and fundamentally, when I think about it, and I'll get to your question in just a second, because I think this is a good way to create a bit of contrast for people, is that heart intelligence is not something you can grab. You can't say, yes, here is the evidence. I'm going to throw it in front of you. You cannot dispute this. This is my 9 yards. This is my pedestal. You're not going to knock me off, And it's like, why is that even necessary? It's you cannot grab this. You cannot quantify it. There's nothing, this is a purely personal experiential thing that you simply go through. And because it doesn't have those qualities of structure that present a handle that you can grab and you can force it together, put it into a book with data and blah, blah, and all this kind of stuff. None of that really matters, because the true quality of our being is beyond structure. Structure is an inherited, invented concept for the purpose of experience in form. But it's not fundamental. What is fundamental is the living love intelligence that is behind it all, that underlied, that instigated structural development, like the analogy with ice forming within the body of water. It is the water, but it's just in a structural crystallized form now. It's just presenting itself in a different way so that you can have the experience of form. And so what I would say is that the living heart aspect and the source intelligence that comes through that is absolutely center and fundamental, irreplaceable. There is no way around it. Going back to truth is literally going back into and surrendering and blending back into that. Now, when two people or more, to come to your question, connect and emanate that energy, it absolutely amplifies. And again, all of this is something that let's call them the structural heads, to kind of a funny phrase, because you can't and I went through the same process, so I understand what they're going through, because I got so frustrated that I couldn't structuralize or grab or quantify what it was that I was going through. But nonetheless, it was happening, because we, as a human race, we have become so fundamentally addicted to the idea of quantifying and grabbing and being able to put straight in front into a book or data or something that there you can see it, there it is. But it's like, no, where did the structure come from? How did it come into being? What's its fundamental underlying? None of which you can answer. Physicists to this day still cannot do that. They'll come up with all sorts of words to say, yeah, it sounds really good and fancy, but nothing gets back to the original source intelligence behind it. And that is an experiential thing. That is something that you cannot quantify. And if you try to, it will elude you, because you can't grab that which cannot be grabbed. And so in that way, I would say that there is no such thing as how could I say? When we have experiences, these are literally the reshaping of reality according to the emanation that we give off. And so we convince ourselves of truth based on what we project outside there and say, look, see, this is for real. I can touch it. I can push it. That is real. Is it? If it's real, when you get to learn how to change that, is it then real? Because it's morphic now. It changes its shape because you change your energy emission. So how real was it to begin with? And so it presents itself to the truth that you want to see in any given moment. But when you have the ability to change that projection, the truth of what you see outside will change also. So it is a relative truth, not an absolute truth. And so when people try to quantify things, they're really talking about the quantifiable aspects in their own feedback of their own relative truth. The truth that they are projecting, that they absolutely need in place to feel safe, to feel familiar, to feel that, yes, see, that always keeps reoccurring. That is a truth. That is an unchangeable truth. Not so. I would disagree. I would say that everything is in fact changeable. But the truth is, are you changeable yourself in order to see that change happen outside of you? And so what I would say is that the experience of the heart center is purely experiential. It's non-quantifiable. It's absolutely there, but you will never reach it if you're trying to say that you will never go there unless you can quantify it or grab it or control it. It's none of those things. It's beyond all of that stuff. And so, in a way of saying it, when mathematicians talk about infinity, they talk about it as if it is just some object. And there are classes of mathematics that use infinity as a sort of within a number set itself. Now, to me, I see it differently. I would say that infinity, and my teams have reiterated this, infinity is not a quantity, it is a quality. The quality of infinity is when all structure has just, And so in other words, when you get back into that pure center of pure self-surrender, you then get access to greater and greater perceptions of the quality of infinity. And when you go all the way back into source self, you have complete access to the quality of infinity. And simultaneously, you can see all of the structure that's been created as well. But the second you take your perception and you anchor it into a structure, suddenly your perception goes and it focuses right within the realm of that structure. Now you've lost the perception of infinity. And this is effectively what's happened to us as human beings and all beings that live in structural form, is that when your focus is within that structure, the confines of the structure, your perception of the infinity quality is very limited because you're very much focused within the structure. And when you meditate and you alleviate yourself slightly of the perception of being so focused in structure, then you get a sense or a smell, if you like, of going back into the quality of infinity again. So yeah, I would say to your question, it's absolutely not woo-woo at all. I know there's a lot of different connotations that people put on different things that make it sound a little bit woo-woo, but fundamentally, if you take all of the namings, the different ways that people talk about things away, and just experience it exactly as it is the most pure fundamental truth that there ever is, and underlies everything structural that ever is as well.
It makes me think of a meditation where I did recently, where they say, become nothing in nowhere at no time, and only then can you become everything everywhere in all times. Yeah, so I'm loving this conversation. The one thing that I wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on yet is just Earth and its nature. Is Earth unique in this energetic conversation?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as far as that I know, this particular experiment of planetary ascension and mass human ascension in form has never been done before. But there are other planets out there that my teams have told me that are going through similar stages in different ways as well. And it really comes down to this process of, and I believe the game idea, on higher levels was to say, okay, if you get yourself into such a densified structure, such a state where you feel like you have next to no perception of being a higher self or source self being, can you then have experiences and work your way back to that truth? And what advancements or lessons, valuable gems could you collect on the way of doing that? So in essence, that's part of what we're doing. It's learning to, because it's like a very, very extreme test of advanced beings to say, okay, here's a really big assault course here. Can you make it to the end? And can you make it to the end by going back into your heart center? And that is the end goal. That's what you're reaching. You're not going to force your way through this. It's not going to work. You're just going to fall off everything, bounce around, get bruises, get hurt, and you're going to ask yourself, what the heck is all this about? Because the trick is to surrender to self. The more you surrender to self, the easier you're going to go through this assault course with, ease and grace and peace. And I know that sounds like, to most people, like, yeah, you tell that to me with all the stuff I'm going through. And in essence, the resistance that comes up inside us is what makes it so unpleasant. That, to me, what I've learned for myself is that I've never found a truth that was deeper in terms of our evolution and what we go through than that. That my teams say that the reason why you feel the way you're feeling is because on some level you are resisting this. You are afraid to move into this, and that's okay. But the resistance, the pain that you're feeling in different parts, that they've told me, it's all because you are resisting. Can you now breathe into that area of resistance and understand the energy of the resistance you are offering and let that go in the simple process we've showed you? And then suddenly it disappears. Because it all comes back down to that strange thing that humanity has taught itself to feel safe if it's in grip and familiarity. As long as I have this, and I'm where I know I'm always familiar with, that I feel safe. That is the opposite of what is actually true. Because to release that and go back into yourself and realize how powerfully protected you are, how powerfully guided that you are, and how powerfully inspired to move forward with ease and grace that you are, is something that's just an unlearning curve that we have to do. And it's all part of the process. So I would equate ascension symptoms very much a part of the inner resistance that we have. And we talked about the mud before. Well, the mud is basically usually just a culmination of fear, control, reactions to things from past lives, a whole slew of things. But it is just part of the package called resistance. And so when you see these advanced beings, I meet them, they have no resistance. They glide. Their whole life, their whole train of perception and talking to you is so effortless. They're so patient. They don't get triggered because they don't have stuff inside their energy field. There's a whole, paradigm of things. But essentially, coming back to your question, is that what we're going through on the Earth right now is the Earth is releasing the immense amount of dross that we as energy generators have created misappropriate energies by our misinterpreting experiences, such as being chased or hunted, all those kind of things. We've created fear, we've created anger, we've created a whole bunch of things, which were understandable. There isn't any judgment here. It's not like, oh, bad human race, what did you do here? It's that, we came into this experience and, as a collective, we went down into this very densified state. And then it was like, okay, right, you've gone as far into this as is okay to do. Now you're going to begin the up journey. Now you're going to come back. And in order to do that, you're going to have to go through clearing processes. You're going to have to clear yourself. And we'd like you to help the Earth with her clearing as well. And you're going to clear together. And you're going to clear off the dross so that each of you can collectively and unifiedly, if you like, with the Earth, begin to emanate more and more and more of your truth, your source intelligence, and come back to that pristine being that you are supposed to be. And that is what I believe that we're doing. And other planets are having similar sort of ascension processes, but slightly different in the way they're doing it. But yeah, it's all literally about this getting back out of this game of densification and illusion making and forgetting who we are and rocketing back into self-remembrance and self-becoming again.
Thank you so much. This interview is going to be released right before we're doing this 10-day heart coherence challenge, where everyone that listens does a heart coherence meditation every day for 10 days. So I'm curious if there's any message that your guides, your team has shared with you recently or even right now, or that you have for everybody listening that's about to embark on that journey.
Yeah, so my teams are saying they'd love to. So what they're saying, there's different forms of connection with them, and passively hearing their thoughts is, I just simply speak out what they're speaking to me. And they're saying what they would love people to focus on is that infinite source gateway, however you wish to do it, simply making the intention to go right in and connect with that core. And they're saying, just a note of caution, and they're smiling, do not try to grab anything there. Do not try to make yourself go there. It is an act of surrendering. So it's a sublime sense of just allowing yourself just to melt back into that center in a way. And it's a very peaceful and beautiful and very graceful process. And they're saying you will find, if you do try to make yourself go there, that you're going to bounce off. You're not going to get there. Because they're saying the fields, the living energy fields that surround the Sacred Heart Center have what they call a formidable defense system. In other words, it will only let the real you in. It's not going to let your programs in. It's not going to let your the ego traits of you in. It will only let the real you in. And so by surrendering and allowing that to take place, you're going to go in there. And then when you come back out again, you're going to carry with you that living intelligence that will then infuse and embody into the cells, the cellular structure, your DNA again. And the more you can bring that in and infuse and infuse and infuse, they're saying you will rapidly walk towards ascension very quickly, because there's nothing more powerful than you emanating the real you into your body. It really is that simple, they're saying.
Thank you so much for this interview, David. This was one of my favorites, and I can see why everyone loves you. Last question, how can everyone support you, your work, any offerings you have going on? How can we get in touch with you?
Sure. We have a few websites. We have a series of innovations that the teams have helped us create, which is to harmonize the environment in much the same way as what I talked about the devices that the Arcturians were helping me generate before. That's on horizontal-infinity.com. The meditation series we do with the teams and the Infinite Source Intelligence is on Patreon, which is, I forgot that you'll probably put the link to address in the description below, but yeah, you can find it. I can't remember the thing, but it's there. And our other site is infinitesourcecreations.com, where you can see all the meditations there. Most of them are for free, but because we had a real problem with adverts coming up during the meditations, we decided to move it to a paid-for platform to keep it advert-free. So any of the activations which are on a personal basis, we do ask for a subscription for those to help support the platform. But everything else is freely accessible. And you can download the meditations and take them with you and listen to them if you want to, and do them as many times as you want as well. But also, I mean, the main message from me personally is that I simply encourage you to just keep going in, finding that truth within you, and it is something that is absolutely personal. No one can do it for you. No one can take it away. You have absolute free choice in every moment to go there. Even like in the background you're in, sitting in a forest, just connecting just for a few minutes, a minute, just whenever you want to. But also just keeping it playful. That's one of the main things I had as a stumbling block in my early years, getting too serious, getting too sort of almost solemn about it. My teams are saying, no, break that habit. That's not going to help you at all. Keep it fun, keep it playful, keep it light-hearted. There's a reason why the phrase light-hearted exists, is because when you are light-hearted, that is your most open state, when your heart opens and that emanation comes through. That phrase is very purposeful in that way. So I would say that, I just hope everybody who's listening to this finds joy in this information. You find that connection within yourself, and you find the profound center that is you, and that all these doubts and, the things that people carry around thinking they're not good enough or worthy enough, I have to say that's utter crap. It really is. And I went through that myself, and you realize when you connect with the heart center, that was such a lie that, humanity has been buying into such a long time. You are an immense, infinite being. And I don't say that word lightly. The infinity to which from which you have come, which you can invite back in and become again, is absolutely there, and it never left. That is you. So just really enjoy that, and that's the best advice I can give people.
Thank you so much, Dave. We love you, and I hope you come back again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of love to you, and thank you again for welcoming me on, and to your audience. Lots of love to you as well, and just have fun. Have fun.
Have fun. Let's go. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.